Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone listening out there, depending on where you are. This is Jonathan Carford, aka Coach K, and I am really stoked, pleased, excited to have my main man here. Just I just barely met Ram. How are you, my friend?
Doing great.
Good. And we just barely connected on LinkedIn, but your profile caught my eye because you have this way extensive background in AI and this IT and all this whole world we're talking about. So I'm really excited to talk to you. But before we get into the details, I'd love to have you, if you don't mind, unveil with the audience listening of a little bit more about you and your own journey of how the heck you got to be where you are now, and your own passion around this whole topic around AI and go to market. So if you don't mind, let's just start off a little bit more about you, and we'll get into it.
Great. Yeah. So happy to be here. And so by education, I'm a chemical engineer. I want to put in a plug that I got my bachelor's degree in a school called the Indian Institute of Technology out of India 30
Cool.
years ago, which is known to be the world's greatest engineering school. Most of the techies here in Google and elsewhere come from my school. Very proud of that. And so
Nice.
the last 35 years, I've spent almost exclusively in the US and global healthcare industry.
Hmm.
And one of the things I noticed as soon as I went into the healthcare industry was, for historical reasons, this industry has been behind on technology. Forget about AI, even when it comes to basic virtualized servers, cloud, it was behind.
Right.
Probably because there was a regulatory restriction, probably because the best and brightest digital people may not want to go and work in healthcare. That's not their first choice.
Right.
But when I went into this industry, I worked in operations and quality assurance, quality control, traditional IT, networks, data centers, certainly the ERP space, and significantly in the operations technology space, which is where the greatest technology can be applied. So, one of the biggest challenges in healthcare is how do you make great products, discover them quickly, and make them cheap and distribute them all over the world in the easiest way possible?
Yeah.
And so, the technology that makes all that happen is called operations technology. This is all the real-time controls, the controls that actually make your products and pack it and ship it and test it and all these things.
Right.
And I found that we were so far behind in technology in the operations space within the healthcare business. I started comparing notes with my friends from other industries like consumer and retail and other areas. I'm like, wow, why are we so far behind? So the last 35 years, I've kind of made my mission to pull the healthcare industry into the latest and greatest technologies.
Mm.
When it comes to AI, the traditional AI, which is your natural language processing or robotic process automation, things where you use AI to analyze existing reams of data, that's
Right.
been on for what, almost 50 years, as far back as IBM's Wisdom and all those tools. So in the last 15 years, we have seen an explosion of using traditional AI to analyze data and trends and inform the C-suite better on how can you
Mm.
make decisions, who's buying your product, who's liking it, who's not, those kinds of things. Then came the machine learning piece, and machine learning was kind of off to the side a lot. But when we had the cloud revolution come in and healthcare companies started using cloud to manage their data,
Right.
then vendors like Salesforce and others came in and said, hey, we can give you a machine learning bot. They have a little bot called Einstein that sits on
Hmm.
Salesforce Cloud. So that was the introduction of the healthcare industry into ML bots. And people started saying, okay, if you're going to give me a tool that I can use on my existing cloud infrastructure, I can run with it. What started to happen there was I noticed that I can't go to the operations head or the quality head or the CEO of a large pharma company and say, here's all the technology, because they gloss over and say, no, no, no. I'm in the business making products and getting them to patients, saving lives. I don't
Right.
know how your technology works. You tell me what you can do to make it better for my patients. And
Yes.
I created a niche for myself. Said, here's the business problem we are trying to solve.
Hmm.
And here's how I can use technology to solve it. That mindset has been with me now for decades, and that's really created a niche. And everything from why does it take $10 billion in 10 years to create a new blockbuster drug? I got patients dying of cancer. How can I get them a product sooner?
Yeah.
I now come in and say, with AI, we can do faster clinical trials globally across a diverse population in any country, in any continent, and I can get you the test results very quickly for this drug. That
Hmm.
type of relating technology benefits directly to patient health, that's been resonating very well with the top executives in the healthcare space. Now, I worked in traditional pharma. I worked in cell and gene therapy, which you may hear a lot about, personalized medicine, making drugs specific to each individual. I've worked in medical devices where, I don't know if you guys have seen this round disc that diabetic patients wear on their shoulders,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Or Freestyle Libre. I'm the one who helped the Abbott Laboratories
Oh,
company
that's amazing.
build and launch that and actually build factories for it. And
I have family members who use that, so thank you for that. That's amazing.
thank you so much. It's so good to see people getting benefit from it. And so
Yeah.
as I looked at these technologies, what I started to see was, wow, there's so much data coming off of these devices, where there's so much data
Right.
from customers calling and telling you how a product is working, hospitals
Right.
calling you and telling you how a product is working or sometimes not working. And I said, okay, so you've got this huge amount of data. And I started to see that in the healthcare industry, the data was not being used. It was sitting in silos. We're collecting customer data. We're not doing anything with it. And I was thinking, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have a tool that can, in an automated fashion, start monetizing this data for corporations?
Right.
I tried to use traditional AI, which was not so great at managing data from different sources. I had to
Right.
convert data. When Gen AI came around, what, about 2 years ago, I started playing with it with ChatGPT initially. And when I looked at what Gen AI can do today versus 6 months ago versus 9 months ago, it's night and day. These tools are learning so quickly. And so I had the privilege of being asked by my current company, Sanofi, to uh, build a roadmap for generative AI. And the interesting thing was the business executives came to me and said,
Yeah.
AI can do so many things. What do we do with it? I'm like, you never you mind what AI can do. What problem we trying to solve?
That's right. That's the right
That's
question.
right. So the good news is that the learning process by which Gen AI tools like Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, or the lesser known Claude from Anthropic AI, or Gemini or Vertex from Google, what they do is they've got a very good learning process. So although initially, the initial attempts at trying to deploy Gen AI tools in healthcare were not successful, primarily because the tools were smart, but they didn't understand the language of healthcare.
Mhm.
They were trained by some techie in San Francisco using Java programming.
Right.
And then I tried to apply that directly to healthcare right off the bat. It didn't work. And so
Right.
I reached back to the various technology companies like Google, like Microsoft, and Anthropic, and I say, guys, you have a very nice tool here, but it's not understanding my language. It doesn't know what a
Right.
feature is. It doesn't know what a injection or sterile variable is. So what I found out was that there's a huge gap between what these tech companies are putting out in terms of the capability and the applicability of these tools immediately. Underpinning all this was a desperate need in the healthcare industry for better technology. Nobody wants to pay $7 for an aspirin prescription, but how do you bring the cost down? Well, you need to use better technology. In the old days, companies said, I want to make a cheaper product. Let me go to Philippines or China or India or Czechoslovakia, somewhere maybe it's cheaper to run,
Right.
which is great. Don't offense to any of those fantastic nations. But that's a coward's way out. We got to find a way to reduce cost here in the United States. How can we do that? The way we do that is by using the latest technology to make your products faster, cheaper, better. So my journey
Right.
has been really, how do you take the best technology, look at the business problems, put them together, and deliver implemented solutions? And the end result is, are we getting products to patients faster? I know it's a long way of answering your question, but you can see a very
No, it's great.
topic.
No, I love the passion. Like this is like I was listening to you going like literally I was saying, I love this is like the best real intro ever because you're like giving all this context and background. So I think this is great, honestly. Just to give some light on this, to kind of people have know a little bit more about you professionally. Like right now, you're the head of AI and digital OT at Sanofi. Is that how you say it? Sanofi?
Yep.
Sanofi? And then you're also a member of the advisory board for Alert AI, who help you with not only AI stuff but go to market. So that's where I was like, you'd be a phenomenal guest. We could talk about both sides, you know. So I'm curious from your lens of just where you're sitting in the marketplace, and specifically to healthcare, is because a lot of people, whether it's healthcare or legal or all this kind of stuff, the whole security, governance, compliance stuff falls in line. So I'd love to hear from your view of like, from a go-to-market leader in like healthcare, how do you think about AI when it comes to the whole security governance portion with that? And how do you make, how do you help mitigate any risk and then concerns or trust that people may have with AI in this whole industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, uh, if you look at, say, Microsoft Copilot, that's pretty commonly being deployed at various big pharma, big healthcare companies.
Right.
Because big healthcare companies like big companies like Microsoft, because they figured Microsoft's got the security in place.
Safe.
Um, but if I want to make sure I take advantage of everything Copilot can do for me, that means I need to be able to use the constantly evolving version of Copilot as it learns in Microsoft's mothership, if you will.
Mhm.
My concern is, as I'm teaching Microsoft Copilot how to manufacture a liver disease medicine so that it can then give me a better way of manufacturing it, it's learning
Right.
it. My question is, okay, what happens to this information that goes into Microsoft's master database of learning? Tomorrow, what happens if a competitor comes in and says, show me how to make liver disease product? Is he going to spit this out? So we said, okay, we need to have a way to control intellectual property. At the same time, we don't want to completely cordon off our organization from the big tech companies' master databases, which have the latest learning. So that problem is not yet being solved. If you look at the cybersecurity tools that are in place today, they were designed 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. Cybersecurity tools today were not designed with Gen AI in mind. So
Right.
if you're a bad actor and you want Microsoft Copilot, you want to fish into my organization, and I'm a licensed user of Microsoft Copilot, my cybersecurity tool cannot distinguish whether you're a bad actor or a good actor because it says you're going to Microsoft license. That's okay. Come on in. That's a nightmare scenario. So a number of big cybersecurity companies like Palo Alto Networks are starting to put some hardware together to put sort of barriers around bad actors using Gen AI coming into people's organizations, stealing their information. Now, no company has given a full solution yet, which is where when the small company called Alert AI, a startup formed by people from Palo Alto Networks, Cisco came to me and said, hey, can you help us out with this? It
Nice.
sounded good to me because what they have is a tool that's a software tool that sits on your network, constantly looks at what your Gen AI is doing, and if it starts doing something fishy, it will throw up an alert and say, "This is not behaving itself."
Nice.
So, cybersecurity has 3 different areas, right? One is certainly proprietary information and IP in any company, including healthcare. The second, this is a nightmare scenario, the patient data. We use a lot of data in healthcare that pertains directly to patients and the clinical trial participants and the consumers of products. We don't want that information to get out. So Gen AI is a tool that is going to give you a lot of efficiency, and it's going to be more efficient the more widely you use it. But there's a fine line in how do I let it get the information it needs, but not let it get the relevant information, which is called PHI, personally identifiable health information. That
Right.
problem has not yet been solved. A lot of companies are working on it. So the initial approach that healthcare companies have taken is, let's put the brakes on implementing too far with Gen AI until the cybersecurity piece is fully in place. So what companies are now doing is saying, we will get a version of Microsoft Copilot from Microsoft. We will install it in our hardware. We're going to coordinate it off from Microsoft's mother database. So it can do its job, but it won't be able to take advantage of the latest innovations that Microsoft is developing for us.
Right.
So we'll do a stepwise change. It's a tricky situation. It's not been solved. But in the healthcare industry, our mantra is, we're here to protect patients. If we need to give up some innovations and protect patients, that's better than open patients up to scrutiny of their health conditions. I mean, imagine, I don't know if you guys have seen the news that companies like United Healthcare have been using AI algorithms to determine what level of care to provide for patients. Whether
Yeah.
you agree with that approach or not, there have been at least some instances where legitimate patients were denied care because of the way the algorithm worked. This is an example where I'm not suggesting anything untoward here. What I'm saying is,
Right.
when an algorithm makes decisions for you in the healthcare space, the Food and Drug Administration, which manages the entire healthcare industry, they say you can't have your software tool making a final decision. You can have it make a recommendation, but you need a human being to come in and make sure you protect the privacy of the patient.
Right.
It's a tricky situation. That's as far as the IP and the healthcare information goes. In addition to that, like any other company, any pharma company will have to have financial information that's secure, especially a global company, Sanofi, Glaxo, and Abbott, any company runs in multiple countries, multiple languages. People who are maybe 25, 30% of the people maybe contract or external employees. What happens is you get a lot of phishing training. If you get an email from somebody in Belgium that you don't know, or sending you a note about a purchase order,
Yeah.
it's misspelled, then don't approve it. I did that.
Right.
6 months ago, I stopped such a process order. Next thing you know, I had an angry lady from France calling me saying, "Why did you order my purchase order?" I followed my purchasing instructions. So in the cybersecurity space, the training people have been given on how to identify phishing attacks, that training is no longer valid in the days of Gen AI. So the
Right.
training has to evolve. There is no answer to that yet. That's a huge risk. In the healthcare industry, most big companies will not want to be the first company to do something unique. So what they do is they wait for one of the other peers to get hit with a big attack. And then they'll all wake up and say, okay, now we'll have to follow a new way of doing things. I'm keeping a very close eye on it. As I talk to my peers in the industry, that is a concern. When will the next,
Yeah.
it's not a question of if, but when will the next attack come in?
Yeah, this whole trust factor, and regardless of industry, is so fascinating to me because there's so much power behind it, but there's very real risks in a lot of different ways, you know? So, like, if we think about um, the HIPAA laws and all the things I know you know way better than I do, and then thinking about the consequences, like, I hear about both sides. Like, there's the side of, like, ChatGPT doing a better job of, analyzing some medical condition than a doctor would or something like that. And then you have the other side of, like, you know, if you have an insurance claim and someone's using an AI to analyze your insurance claim, you get denied what should have been approved. Like, you have this both sides of the park, you know? So I'm just curious of, like, where do you see things going that would hopefully be beneficial and help mitigate some of these problems around, you know, like both helping doctors become better and then also making sure people will get coverage if they need and should have coverage of insurance with health stuff, you know?
So I think what I would see as an evolution is the big tech companies that run massive cloud programs, whether it's Amazon or Google or Microsoft or Salesforce, they have very strong cloud programs where they offer to host a vast amount of healthcare data across all parts of the spectrum.
Right.
These same health technical companies are also coming up with the latest and greatest Gen AI innovations, and they're starting to offer more cybersecurity controls around their cloud environments. What I see happening is if you have, say, Amazon coming in and saying, we're going to give you our latest and greatest AI tool within our cloud environment, it's going to be ring fenced by our own cybersecurity tools. So
Mm.
we assure you that our tool will run inside a secure environment. You should feel comfortable putting data anywhere in the world in this particular virtual data center or virtual cloud environment. And we stand behind securing the data. I see that
Mhm.
coming up. So you may see some consolidation among the smaller Gen AI players, but I would feel better knowing that the biggest and strongest cloud players are going to offer the biggest and strongest cybersecurity measures along with Gen AI tools. And that
Right.
you can have, I wouldn't call it a one-stop shop necessarily, but a certain level of assurance that your data is being operated upon in a cyber secure fashion. We're not there yet.
Right.
We're getting there.
That's amazing. I'm going to shift gears a little bit because I love hearing this, but I want to go into the business side. I have a lot of thoughts, but my first one is, oh man, this I could go a lot of different areas. When you think about strategy and how you apply AI as a power to different people's products or viewpoints, it's like I know you know this more than anybody. The AI is becoming like kind of like electricity, where it's you can be adapted or use it in a lot of different ways. So it's really good about how do you use it. When you're going into teams like Alert or others and asking for your advice on AI and go to market, like what's your thought more high level strategic of saying of how to think about AI to execute because the actual AI itself is just a commodity, you know? So it's like, how do you advise people of what they do from a strategic standpoint, either from products or implementation or whatever to take full use of the AI power?
That's a great way of asking the question, and it's a proper issue that's close to my heart. So,
Yeah.
the biggest consumers of AI are non-tech companies, right? Because there are more non-technical companies in the world than tech companies. These companies, car manufacturers, airlines, pharmaceutical companies, federal government. And so, what we want to do for a company that's creating a tech product, whether it's a startup or a large company, a vast majority of the technology really is a platform. I can't use a platform to do my job. I want a plug and play tool. So the go-to-market advisor I'm giving to some companies from Y Combinator that reached out to me or to Alert or even the big ones like Microsoft, what I'm telling them is, you have a great algorithm. I get it. I don't care about your algorithm. You put it in a nice wrapper and give it to me for my use cases so I can plug and play. My job should only be how do I feed it my data. So the key is really strategically for a tech company to be successful with a Gen AI tool. Think tool, don't think platform. What it does
Right.
inside it, that's not my concern. That's your concern. You're the expert at it. But I want you to understand you have to create a tool that's specific to my industry. Now, that led to some conversations I had with the people from Microsoft saying, Copilot is a great tool, but when I fed it my procedures in healthcare, it had no idea what I was talking about. So I pushed them, and now you saw the announcement from Satya Nadella saying, we're going to create
Mhm.
industry verticals for maybe manufacturing or healthcare or pharmacy or whatever the case may be. That's fantastic. So really my guidance to any tech company is create a tool that can be plugged and played. You cannot just sell a platform. I had a very bright young
Yeah.
lady from Y Combinator a few weeks ago reached out saying, ex-Google superstar, and she said, I've got this great synthetic data generation model. How can I sell it to healthcare? I'm like, you can.
Right.
So what do you mean? You can go to a healthcare company and say, here's a synthetic data generation model. The question is, what am I going to do with it? But if you were to say,
Right.
where can you use this model? I gave her some very specific use cases. It comes down to creating the use case, which is created by the user, and taking the platform and meshing the two and creating a plug and play tool that can be activated with a throw of a switch. That's what
That's cool.
you do. That's for any kind of Gen AI tool.
Yeah, I love that. It's really about, because I guess I have a lot of conversations with people of like saying, like, when AI, and you have AI and automation or AI agents or whatever you want to call it that can take over a lot of the standard sales process, then people are asking, so what 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 would the salesperson of the future look like and what would they do? And to me, I see this narrowing of skills to where it's all the human based skills because all the other stuff AI can do, eventually. So it's just, and then you think about it from how can you then adapt that AI power to your unique team strengths in the marketplace in the industry to do things that no one else can do. And I think that's where the question that people, you haven't had that ability or option before. Now you do. Like, well, so what do we do? What's the strength? Going along these same lines from like a business process standpoint, kind of talking about the whole like AI replacing some portions of the sales process eventually. I heard a friend of mine once, and I respect him a lot. So I say this with all the respect I can, that he felt like process comes first and then AI or any tool comes second. And I agree with that to an extent. But at the same time, I'm like, there's things that AI can enable that would shift the process because you now have the ability of doing things you couldn't do before. I'm wondering from your viewpoint, what do you think? As far as business processes or strategy, or not necessarily strategies, but systems, how do you think about redoing a process you may have done for years and years and years and years, but you can do differently now because AI can do a lot of the things differently. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. So two things. One is when I started writing a Gen AI roadmap, I said, what are our goals? One, we want to automate repetitive tasks. Two, we want to reduce errors. Three, we want to reduce headcount and cost.
Yep.
Or we want to provide predictive analytics to what the future might hold, predictions. And finally, the final step is how do we actually innovate faster? How do we create new drugs faster, innovate a process faster? That's the overall roadmap. Now, one very specific example I provide. In most any company, there's a group called learning and development, right? They take all the teaching. What they do, they take these procedures that are created to run the company and they create PowerPoint decks out of it and they create knowledge checks out of it and implement it and apply it, administer it to various users. More rigid in healthcare and less rigid in other areas. You wouldn't believe the tens of millions of dollars that are wasted on this process by manual work every time. I said, hey, why don't we use Microsoft Copilot? Our
Yeah.
procedure, Microsoft Word, it can read it, it can create a PowerPoint deck, it can create a knowledge check. Well, there's an automation. That's an example where we can cut an entire multi-million dollar function out of an organization and use AI to automatically generate training decks by reading the procedure and then coming back and saying, here's the questions. So almost like creating an automated quiz. That's something
Right.
that wasn't done before. That's a very simple example. It may not be very glamorous, but if you look at the amount of money and time it saves, it's significant. At the other end of the spectrum, driving innovation, I might say, I want to create this gene therapy drug for children under 7 who have liver cancer in different geographies all over the world.
Right.
Now, for me to do that, I have to have 7 different systems They have to absorb information about clinical trials from so many different regions. Some of them do it by hand, some of them by automated readers, some of them into
Right.
system. I find that I can actually use a Gen AI tool to automatically absorb the data from whatever source it may be without converting it, create a nice picture for me. Here's your data picture. Here's the trends of where it's working, where it's not. That's
Mhm.
the holy grail of Gen AI. We're not there yet. But in terms of reducing errors, reducing headcount, creating automated steps for repetitive tasks, uh, reducing your cost of goods sold, that's where Gen AI is being used significantly now. In those segments, the process has to come first. Your process has to be optimized before you automate it. But when
Right.
it comes to innovation, what I find, there's one recent study that came out recently that says, before I even try this drug, I can use AI to tell me how your protein structure will respond when I put this drug on top of it. That's
Mm.
something we could not do before.
Yeah, that's
It's
cool.
a completely new way that AI and Gen AI are thinking and giving us sort of a prediction. Hey, if you do this, here's what could happen. That's the power that we can harness. Something as simple as FAA could use that. How do I reduce
Right.
crashes? How do I prevent windows from blowing out or whatever else has been going on with Boeing or some other company? Because as we have more and more evolved way of thinking, AI can tell us a way to predict the future. Wouldn't it be nice if we could see what the future holds? AI can do that for us, but that's the final step. And there's a risk involved with that because AI cannot, it's not like Skynet from the old days in Terminator, right? It's not yet self.
Right.
But if we program it correctly with enough variables, it should be
Mhm.
give us a reasonable facsimile of what the future might hold. There's a risk involved because human tendencies, if a computer tells me something, I'm going to trust it completely because it's a nice digital output.
Right.
So simplifying process, automating, all those things are good. And innovation, when getting there, I would see use cases that are less risky to people that are going to be used first. Something as simple as stock market. Will the stock price go up next year or not? Well, my AI algorithm can crunch through 7 or 8,000 different permutations in a matter of minutes, more than my broker in Merrill Lynch or wherever can do. So that's something I'm already starting to use it for.
I love it. Yeah, this topic, like, I'm so glad to have it because like I could go down so many paths with you, but I have a interesting one that I'm curious of because like you have this obviously vast background in IT and AI and all this stuff, and so you have a lot of skill sets that a lot of people don't have, and you also have this go to market. So when you're talking to go to market leaders and you start talking about what they individually need to do or know or develop skill wise as you look into 25, when you're talking to a CEO, a chief marketing officer, chief, like whoever, it doesn't matter who it is, do you find yourself repeating the same skills over and over, saying, like, if you want to work with AI on any level or understand how to work with AI, this is what you need to do? What do you tell them?
So the theme I've found myself repeating significantly is around don't start with the technology, start with the end user problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And I tell people pretty bluntly, look, you guys are making great technology. Your goal is to sell it for a profit. Yes. Well, who are you going to sell it to? Here's my customer base. And I've encouraged the AI tool makers to look at the broad customer base in verticals and horizontals.
Right.
Don't make a tool that's one size fits all. No one's going to buy this thing. Whereas if you say, I want to create this coding tool that can code industrial coding, that can automatically code power plants. Now you've got a very specific niche. And so why would you want to go after power plants? Well, they're a multi-billion dollar, maybe $1 trillion industry. You should be willing to create and craft a tool and a campaign to sell directly for that industry. Well, and they asked me, where do you start? I said, talk to some of the leaders. I can help you facilitate that. What problems are they facing? What does PG&E worry about in
Mhm.
California? Do they worry about generating more power? Maybe. But the biggest problem is when is the next fire going to be coming down and burning the place down? Well, can you
Right.
provide a way for them to create a topographic image of here's where all the trees are, how fast will the trees grow, if there's more rain or less rain, when will there be the next fire because my transformer
Mhm.
is going to scratch. That level of detail is what you need. You always say start with the business problem you're trying to solve. You don't
Yeah.
define the business problem for the business. That's not your job. Let the business define it, but target your customer base, listen to their problems, have them define it. Wouldn't it be nice if we could do this for you? And that's where the conversation starts. So I've spent a lot of time facilitating between the tech companies and the potential consumers. And always, like, what I find myself doing is sometimes the tech company folks, even the go-to-market folks in tech companies, they tend to focus more on how great their technology is. And I keep pulling them back. Say, no, nobody cares how great the technology is.
Right.
No
Right.
one's going to pay you to tell them how great it is. Show me what business problem it can solve. That's
Yeah.
the theme I've found pushes more. And it's been finding some good resonance.
Yeah, I come from a sales and enablement background. And so, funny enough, I always tell people when I'm talking to salespeople all the time when they're selling somebody else, I'm like, no one gives a shit about your product. What they care about is their problems. So, if you can understand the problems, then the product has value. Otherwise, what the crap are you doing? And it's so funny because when I do AI consulting or recommending, I do the exact same thing. I say, what's your business objectives? What's the problems you're trying to solve? Because the AI will fit in once you discover or understand where to prioritize that. Otherwise, if you throw shiny tools to throw shiny tools, you just automating or speeding up the wrong thing, you know, which is crazy. Well, tell me this. I'm curious because you talk about, I love you're using feedback from customers to understand, like what's the problems to solve, this kind of stuff. It reminds me of a quote, and I'm asking this because I'm curious on your thoughts with this from Henry Ford about how he said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me to make a better horse or a faster horse, whatever the quote is. So how do you balance the innovation of like what is new and what else can happen versus like what the problems we're experiencing now, like how do you balance those two sides?
So, there's a linear development of innovation and there's a
Yeah.
massive step change. Apparently, in 1800s London, one of their renowned scientists said, if the number of horse carriages continues to increase in London, in the next 20 years, it'll be impossible to clean all the horse manure because the horses will never stop. They'll keep running all the time. This is an individual that never thought of, wow, what happens if a car comes in? So it's really important for us to think of what is a linear improvement, right?
Right.
So AI was doing data analysis at 70% speed. Now it's 80% speed. That's linear. But Gen AI is a revolution. When I first demonstrated Gen AI to my quality team and said, this is going to create a quality plan for you. And they laughed at me. I said,
Right.
I wanted to create a bioreactor quality plan. I said, well, tell it that. They spoke in the microphone. This thing churned the whole thing out and stopped and said, is this meeting your expectations? Is this the
Right.
And it was amazing. So what was happening was Gen AI tools were behaving like an entry-level employee, smart, full of potential, but needing more instructions. The more instructions you give it, the more it can do. It can do it faster with lesser errors in a more innovative manner that you haven't thought about. So really, there is always going to be a incremental change in efficiency and so on. But Gen AI is a massive step change. AI has been around for 50 years. No one's been talking about it. Gen AI came
Right.
years ago. All of a sudden, it's also given rise to interest in overall AI. So Gen AI is a revolutionary
Right.
change. I will also say that in terms of versions, Gen AI today is not even a beta version, it's the version 0. By first quarter of 2026, you're going to see so much power, it'll blow you away. And as I've been engaging with the leaders of AI in Google as recently as 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
well, hey, your tools aren't so great. It's no, let us show you what we're doing behind the scenes.
That's good to hear because I'm like, come on, Google, give me some more. I'm glad to hear that.
And I'd said, why can't I use a camera enabled with Gen AI to look at
Right.
an operator in an oil field and tell me what he's doing incorrectly? And they actually showed me an example. And they showed this guy without a helmet, and it beeped and said, this person does not have a helmet. That's not safe. Oh, wow.
Well,
I think that massive exponential change is coming around the corner. So it's both ways, right? One, if you leave it alone, it can take over. But that's not what we want it to do. We want to harness the power and kind of focus it on specific areas for major problems in day-to-day life. At the same time, R&D arm of Gen AI, which happens in companies like Google, when they create all these new cool things. And there probably is a lag of 12 to 18 months before those things hit the market.
I love hearing you say. I know you have the inside scoop because you have the connections, obviously, to that kind of stuff. So I love it. Going on the same vein, I'll probably ask this one last question to you to kind of end with this. But by the time this podcast comes out, will probably be January-ish. So we're recording this in December. It'll come out probably mid-January. What do you foresee are going to be the greatest disruptors in AI tech as far as business is concerned? Like, what do you think is going to happen this next year?
The biggest disruptors I see are creating industry verticals and function horizontals specific to Gen AI tools. That is going to rapidly increase the adoption rates, rapidly shows hard benefits to businesses globally across different industries. And Microsoft's already started with that. To me, that's the biggest improvement. And by the way, I'm tired of waiting for big tech to move fast. So I'm in the process of departing my role in Sanofi and starting a startup. But I'm going to show you how to take Gen AI
Oh boy,
apply it to each industry. That's going to happen in the next few months.
that's amazing. Well, then, yeah, I need to have you come back when you get things going. Let's get you back on here and talk about it. That's awesome. When are you? So tell me, can I ask a sneak peek about this? Like, what? Tell me more. What are you doing?
So I'm starting with one basic use case. People say that Gen AI tools can replace humans to do coding. That's great, but that's only for software coding. The highest volume of billions of lines of code in the world is called industrial code. This is that runs your car, your machines, manufacturing, traffic lights, all the real-time physical movements that occur for machines globally in all processes.
Right.
That's run by industrial code. This is 30 years old, very robust code, and very few people know how to program it. It costs $300,000 a year for each programmer to do industrial coding. I've been working very hard to train a Gen AI tool to run industrial code for me automatically. And
Wow.
it's starting to go very well. You're talking about a $4.5 trillion spent each year globally. I'm pushing very hard for it. And I think that's an area I want to start first. The start looking at is called Warp9 AI. And what Warp9 is going to do is take the latest technology that tech companies are putting out there and create saleable, marketable, immediately implementable tools for each of the verticals and horizontals. And that's my goal. Get the products to market faster that can be used by non-tech people.
That's amazing. So the ultimate goal is for you to be able to have, so let me make sure I'm understanding this because this is awesome. You want to be able to take that and then have it applied to legal, to healthcare, to retail, to whatever, and have it applied to whatever they need to. That is killer. I'm excited. Well, then when you're ready and you launch it, tell me. I'll come play because I love tools like that. Sounds like fun. Ram, thank you so much. What's the best, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for someone to get in touch?
My email, it is, I can even put it in the chat, rambul1989@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And that's the best email. And of course, LinkedIn is always a great way to reach out. My email should also show up on LinkedIn if I'm not mistaken. So people are welcome to reach out with questions, suggestions, anything. I'm pretty open. As long as people don't try to sell me things, I'm okay.
Well, I can tell you from experience, I don't think I'm trying, I don't have anything to sell you. So you've been very friendly, very kind to me, and I just really appreciate it. I'll make sure we have your email and your LinkedIn in the show notes to make sure people can catch it. Make sure people can get in touch with you. And I'm really excited to see your tech. So when you get ready to launch it, tell me, I'll help you blast it. It'll be fun. So it'll be cool. Cool.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity and the platform.
Thank you, Ram. Appreciate it. Good to talk to you.